after I accumulated like a few tracks in that space, I thought, let me just keep doing this and see if I end up with 15, 17 tracks, then I'll put them all together. And so that's kind of how it happened. The other part of that project, the other sort of inspiration was, I had sort of seen this YouTube series called, Against the Clock. And it is a series where you probably
I've seen some of those.
Yeah.
So Tom Misch has one. There's like a bunch of them.
There's a lot of really good ones. And the concept really quickly is just, they get 10 minutes to make a beat. And especially after I moved to India, this whole concept of making a beat quickly and in a Zen kind of way, just brute force, like, let me just make a beat, like, whatever. I'm just going to wake up, make a beat. It's sort of tied to that idea of just, getting up in the morning or whenever it is you get up and showing up to your self-appointed job, So it's a way of moving past the whole I don't feel inspired today situation. And so the beauty of because when I initially moved to India, at first I was like, let me make a beat in a day. And then later on, I was like, let me try and make, there's like a hashtag over here called 1 beat 1 week. And I was like, oh, let me try and make a beat in a week. And the making a beat in a day didn't work out too well because it put the idea in my mind that it needs to take up a whole day. And the making a beat in a week didn't work out too well because it put the idea in my mind that it needs to take a whole week. But 10 minutes, I mean, you got 10 minutes. And, most days you got 10 minutes. And if you want to stick around for an extra 5, extra 20, whatever, you can do it. But just sit down for 10 minutes. And if it's garbage, it's garbage. If it's not, it's not. Whatever. That's good. So that's the attitude that I brought to all of the tracks on this Sleepless in Andheri West. So I would just like, I never had any preconceived idea of what I wanted to make when I made each one of those beats. I would just like, I'd be like riding in an auto rickshaw here in Bombay and you'd hear like some old Hindi song in the background. So I'd like quickly haul out Shazam and like, figure out what song it is. And then I would go back and I had amassed like a bunch of old Hindi songs that I thought were cool. And I would just like dump them into Ableton and like brute force just start chopping it up without any expectation or preconceived idea of what the track was supposed to sound like when I finished it. And so I kept doing that until I ended up with about, 17 tracks. And then I decided to put it together into like a coherent, front to back listen. And so that's how the Sleepless in Andheri West beat tape came about. And Old Sage is just one of the tracks in that whole collection. And they all sort of have that workflow, and they all have a certain different feeling, based on whatever Hindi song I had been sampling.
Love it! Wow, I'd love to see like a screenshot of your Ableton project just to see what that like looks like.
Oh, it's super minimalist. So the Ableton the rule for that particular project was that I was only allowed to have 3 tracks. So
my God,
one drum rack that's just dedicated to the samples. And then another track that's just drum samples for like the percussion, like the beat. And then I only allowed myself one instance of Massive to just program the bass, to synthesize the bass. So I only allowed myself three tracks. And so all the beats were made very quickly. And the only thing that took a lot of time was like, if you listen to this project front to back, you'll hear these like snippets from like podcasts and lectures and stuff that I kind of listened to. And so the difficult thing was actually just picking out those little snippets of speech and selecting ones that, I didn't end up regretting later. The first iteration, the first iteration of the project happened around the time that there was an election here, a national election in India. And I had ended up choosing a lot of snippets that were like just, I was really just enraged by the whole political situation, and I had picked like a lot of, and I still am, but I picked a lot of.
It sounds like all of us in every country are enraged.
Speaking of, right, but I had picked a lot of snippets that were sort of directly referencing the political situation, and then like a couple of months later, when I was listening back to that first draft, I found that like a lot of those snippets were maybe. Not that I didn't agree with them anymore, but that they were just maybe a little bit too on the nose, especially for like a foreign-born Indian like me to kind of, so I had to sort of scale it back and make the references a bit more abstract. So The interesting thing about that project is that the thing that actually took the time was the selecting those snippets. The beats were all made very, very quickly. And that was very much the intention of the beats, was like, let me just make a beat as quickly as possible and see what happens. And so there's a follow-up to that beat tape that's going to be coming out soon called Nobody Ever Comes to VP. And the only difference is that the source material is different. So Sleepless in Ontario West is all old Hindi songs, old-ish, retro, old Hindi songs.
Yeah.
And Nobody Ever Comes to VP is the same concept, except instead of the Hindi songs, I'm using music from Toronto between the mid-90s and mid-2000s.
All right. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of, I'm trying to like reference my Canadian rock, what are they? What's the big band from Toronto from that era?
Oh,
I'm blanking.
Broken Social Scene was the kind of big conglomerate.
I love that band.
Yeah.
I love Broken Social Scene.
But
yeah, they're great.
On the sort of companion piece to the Toronto centric beat tape, I'm sampling from things like Metric, Feist, but also like hip hop and R&B artists like Deborah Cox, Chaos, Estero. Nice. Hopefully
cool.
You'll get to hear it when it comes out.
I was thinking of the Tragically Hip. I don't know if they count.
They are from Ontario. I don't think are they from Toronto? They might be from Toronto, but they're also a little bit not in the specific era. Like
right, they're a little earlier.
Yeah, it happened kind of by accident in the sense that like I didn't start off with the intention of selecting music from that era of Toronto. Like at that time, when I first moved over here, I discovered this podcast radio station record label called Solection. And so a lot of the beats at that time that were trending had these sort of R&B vocal samples in them. And it's a style that I had never sort of experimented with myself. And so I started looking for music to sample that had these sort of R&B runs and stuff like that in it. And sort of by accident, a lot of the artists that I had were the songs that were in my library that I was selecting to sample were these R&B artists from Toronto, like Glenn Lewis, Jack Soul, and the Philosopher Kings, Jarvis Church, that kind of thing. And so similar to the Hindi songs, I just sort of accidentally ended up with a collection of tracks, like say 5 or 6, that had a similar type of source material. And so once I was like, oh, I got this source material that's kind of the same, let me just keep going with this and then I'll have a project. And so in a sort of weird kind of way, the Sleepless in Ontario West is these old Hindi songs that's like a tribute to my time in Bombay, and then like the Toronto songs from the follow-up beat tape is sort of like a tribute to my time in Toronto.
Nice.
That's kind of, yeah.
Love it. I'll tell you, the name of my first like little EP that I ever put out was Dual Citizen, because I felt like I'm a little bit of this, I'm a little America, I'm a little bit Israel, like, so I totally get your vibe.
Yeah, it's hard to sort of manifest this sort of dual identity in a way that's not corny. Because like when we grow up in a diaspora community, especially in a place like North America, but certainly Canada, we're often like incentivized to wear our identities on our sleeves in a way that our counterparts in our home countries or mother countries, or however you want to say it, are not. So like it's a common thing where, you'll have an artist from the Indian diaspora, say in Canada, that like has the word Desi like in their name, and they have all this like overt Indian kind of references in their stuff. And then they come over here, and like, especially if you get mixed up in the indie music scene over here and you're really representing this India thing really hard, and everyone over here is like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? I experienced that when I came over here. Like
that's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Like my name before it was family, it was, I had for my electronic music, it was Bombay Black, with black spelled Blaque. And I thought like, that's like a really dope name for a hip hop producer if you are of Indian origin and you live in Toronto. But within like 2 months or two or 3 months of living here, like the corniness of that just immediately dawned on me. I was like, wow, that's really, I don't know. I don't know if I can continue. Like nobody had to tell me, like few people did tell me, but before anyone told me, I already felt that this moniker just can't last. It can't be the Like I have
Right.
to change it. So
Yeah, when you, it's interesting. It's like when you go back to that home country that you're representing abroad, let's say, or representing in like the country you grew up in, like you don't have to prove anything.
yeah,
You know,
and the more
like
you try
coming
to
from the Jewish side of it, it's like I don't have to prove that I'm Jewish in Israel, which is a Jewish state. You know what I mean? Like, and that was so important. You know, as part of my identity growing up in the diaspora. I pronounce diaspora, I guess, a little differently than you. Like, but growing up in New York is like, okay, being Jewish is a big deal. Like, this is my entire identity, and in Israel, it's everyone's identity. So it's like there's nothing to prove anymore.
Yeah, spot on. You got it.
So it's so cool. It's so cool to hear that from someone else who's had like a similar experience. I love that. Dude, yeah, just because it's getting late, let's move on to the next song in the sauce, and we'll have a listen to kind of how you work with other artists, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, well, I gotta ask you all about you and your background when you come on my podcast eventually, right?
Oh, dude, I would love to. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I don't know if my story is as interesting as yours, but I'm happy to chat.
No, we'll do it. We got to do it.
Sick, dude. Thanks. So I'm gonna pull up the next song, which is. Yeah, They Finally Heard Us without an A by the Cognac Net, like a herd of sheep, I guess, is the point. So I'm gonna play it in real time now, and we'll have a listen. Awesome, man. Some good old rock and roll here.
Yeah, man. So the Cognac Net is a band that has 3 guitarists, which, for a guy like me, I'm always trying to eliminate layers from compositions before I add any. So just the fact that they have 3 distinct guitar players was a challenge for me. So my approach with these guys was like, I mean, I almost always take this approach when I'm producing a band, which is that if you want guitar overdubs, usually I'm forcing you to like, I'm making you change guitar, I'm making you use a different guitar, and I'm making you use a different amp if possible. So this band, that became even more important because it's like 3 different characters on guitar. So this is a track especially where, you know, the guitars are layered up and doubled up. You know, each guitar player is doubled up as well. Not the guitar part isn't doubled necessarily, but you know, it's just there's a lot going on. There's like lots and lots of layers. And so the first thing was like, listen, you guys need to select different amps. Like what kind of amp do you like? What kind of amp do you like? What kind of guitar are you using? So that's hopefully that helps with the sound, and hopefully there's some clarity in the guitar parts just because there is so much going on. In terms of my contribution compositionally to this track, I composed and arranged, I guess something in between composed and arranged the harmonies. Towards the end of the track, there's a big choir section. So the songwriter had sort of initially had the melody there in the background as the backup. and and there was a chorus of people singing it. So I just sort of took the time to arrange that into a more of a like a 3-part, 4-part